Hi, I'm the Moorlander and this is Moorlander EDC. I hope you're all good. I hope you all had a cracking weekend. It's a bit damp and a bit crappy here, and yet again, you know, I'm sounding incredibly British starting a piece of content talking about the weather. So let's just get straight into it, because we are here to look today at the Spyderco UKPK. Now, being a knife person, I think there are certain knife companies that, you know, it's always good to own at least one of those. I'm a backpack kind of guy, but I still have a massive love for knives. They're an incredibly useful tool to use on your person to be able to get through the day. And with Spyderco, I made a decision quite early that I thought that with Spyderco having the UKPK, which, by the way, just in case you were unaware, so here in the UK, it's illegal for us to have knives that have a locking mechanism, or at least it's illegal for us to carry those in public or to go to public places with them. It's certainly not illegal for us to own locking knives. So Spyderco noticed that there was a gap in the market there, specifically with their line of or range of knives, and had the UKPK, which is United Kingdom pocket knife. So with the Kingdom of the Moorlands, you know, where I'm the king of here, it made perfect sense that being part of the United Kingdom, that my first Spyderco knife was the UKPK. So I thought I've been testing this out now for about 4 or 5 months. No, yeah, 3 or 4 months, and yeah, let's get into it so you can see my thoughts on this. As I usually do, you know, I'll turn the camera around while I'm doing that. If at any point you do enjoy this content, please feel free to hit that like button and subscribe. That would be awesome. But for now, I'll turn the camera around and we'll take a closer look at the UKPK. Okay, now before I start, probably one thing to mention here is some eagle-eyed viewers may notice that this is slightly different from the regular international model that you've probably seen from Spyderco for the UKPK. And that is because the version that I have here is an exclusive to Heinnie Haynes, who are a UK retailer for EDC style products. Always recommend checking them out, actually, whether you're from the UK, whether you're abroad. I certainly know for myself, I don't always just look at UK sites. You know, I'm always on Tackworks from Germany and Blade HQ and places like that, just to see what are the trends all around the world, that sort of stuff. So definitely recommend checking them out. By the way, this isn't in any sort of affiliation with Heinnie Haynes. You won't believe the amount of emails that I send to them. Shout out to Ollie. I know you get a lot of emails from me. But yeah, you should definitely check them out. But they have their own exclusive version of this, which is slightly different. Which we'll touch on some of the differences. The main one is the red. Here are some other Heinnie Haynes exclusives, which we'll have a look at towards the end of this piece of content. But there are some subtle differences which we'll have a look at. The main one here being that there is a little H, which is the Heinnie Haynes H that they have on their logo. And the scales that this is made from as well. So as we usually do, you know, we'll get into some of the dimensions, we'll get into some of the materials and features and so on and so forth. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip this over, mainly because there is the pocket clip here on this side, and it just stops it from rattling around a little bit, although it kind of does feel strange with the tip pointing that way. Okay, so overall length, what I'll do is I'm going to put this here this way around, mainly because I'm going to give you all of this in millimeters. But for the people that are still working in inches, it just gives you a little bit of an idea of the measurements in inches. So the overall length from the end of the scales to the tip of the knife is 175 millimeters. It's a good size when it's in your hand. I think as far as your EDC fair kind of knives, it's just that perfect size. When it's closed, just if we're looking at the length of the scales really on this, there are no extended tangs or anything that come past where the scales are. Then it comes down to 102 millimeters. The length of the knife, or at least the full length of this knife, from the tip all the way to where the scales are here, all through the ricasso part, is 75 millimeters. Important thing to note, especially here in the UK, the length of the cutting edge is the important part. You can have a 10-inch blade and it can still be legal as long as the cutting edge is 3 inches or less. The cutting edge on this one comes in at 68 millimeters, which fits perfectly within UK, or I suppose there are lots of different laws, and mainly because there are independent laws for England and Wales, for Scotland and Northern Ireland. But what you'll generally tend to find is that it's all this 3 inch. So there isn't really a UK law. There are 3 or 4 laws within the UK from the different countries. Even here in the Kingdom of the Moorlands, we tend to copy the same as the English and the Welsh law. But they're all slightly different in certain respects, but the vast majority of them, it has to be 3 inches or less, and without a lock or any sort of feature on there that stops the knife from closing. The blade stock comes in at 2.3 millimeters. When you go down the blade to the largest width on this, which I didn't really check with this. I think that's probably going to add another 4 millimeters. But if you were to take the pocket clip off just for the scales and the blade stock, it comes in at 10 millimeters. Okay, so that's your measurements out of the way. Oh, actually, I forgot to point. So as far as the weight, I guess it's an important one. It's not particularly heavy. It's only 64 grams. Sorry. So again, it's kind of within all of these other pocket knives. It's all within that kind of size. I think one of the advantages of the construction of this is that there are no internal metal scales or no internal metal framework within here to add to that weight. The construction of this is very, very simple, as is the construction for most slip joint knives, where you have the stock for the actual blade itself. There is a retention spring which helps to add to the tension of this, and then actually in this one there isn't even a spacer, because the spring itself runs all the way across the back, which if you look at the other version of the UKPK, which I suppose we'll call that the international version, there is this back pin. I think this back pin is still there, but it's not holding the tension spring in there. The tension spring runs roughly to about here, I believe it is, and then there is a gap here, and the spacer is actually built into either the left or the right side of the scale. Highly recommend, if you don't know the guy, definitely check out Nick Shabazz. So Nick Shabazz, if you're a knife guy, you definitely know Nick Shabazz. Definitely check out one of his videos. It's pretty simple to search for here on YouTube, and he does a teardown of the international version of this, so you can see exactly how it tears down, and also, which we'll touch on in a minute. Rather than being a traditional slip joint similar to this in the mechanics of how this opens, Spyderco. Now you look on the Spyderco website and they're like, "Ooh, this revolutionary." So I think it started out being a clip-it joint, and then it turned to a slip-it joint. And there's this high kind of marketing on how they revolutionized the industry and changed the way that this functions. It's kind of the same. It's just got more of a hidden feature in the way that it works, but definitely check out the video, and it's something that we'll touch on at the moment. So getting back to the construction of here, hopefully you'll be able to see there is a perfectly flat high grind on this, which is very nice. It has that Spyderco feature with the little hole there, so when it's closed it makes it easy to be able to open kind of one-handed. One of the difficulties with this, and I certainly don't want to talk a lot about the negatives of this, because I don't like to look at negatives. I generally prefer to look at things that I would possibly change. And the thing that I change with this is really, and it's one thing that I hate to use the term disappointment, but you get the Spydie knives and you want to be able to do the Spydie flick. So as this opens, there are two detent points. There is, there's the full open. You start to close it. There is a second one here, and we'll call this at the 6 o'clock position. And then when it closes fully at the 3 o'clock position. And there is a really good, nice detent spring in there, which helps it to make sure that that locks firmly in position so that you know that it's closed. But this position here in the middle, that's really where it gets stuck. So unless maybe you're Eddie Hall and you've just got ridiculously strong fingers, it's very hard to be able to Spydie flick this. Now, I'd love to hear in the comments below, can you Spydie flick one of these? Maybe it is my technique, maybe it's something that I just need to work on. I'd certainly love to hear if you can Spydie flick a UKPK. There is some jimping, so we've got some jimping here, here at the top and here at the bottom. So as this, the finger choil here, which I think is a really nice feature. I think Spyderco have put obviously a lot of thought into this. So where the finger choil is here, there's the jimping into that, but then you have another thumb section here at the top with some extra jimping to be able to stop any sort of slippage. So when that closes, this smooth edge here actually then incorporates this thumb bit into there, which I think is a really nice aesthetic, a really nice thing that they've thought more into as far as how the knife looks when it's open and how the knife looks when it's closed. Sorry, getting back, I seem to be waffling quite a bit on this one, so I do apologise about that. But getting back to the knife geometry is a slip. Sorry, it is a slip joint, but sorry, the knife geometry is a drop point, and it has a brushed finish to it. It's not. I do quite like a satin finish, where brushed and satin they're kind of similar, but you can see the striations in this where that brushing is, which I do quite like it. It's not a bad thing. And then so we've looked on this side. You can see that it says Spyderco, and as far as steels are concerned, it is a CPM S30V steel. Now, as far as getting into steels, a lot of the steels on a lot of the knives, so I'm just going to flip that over again, a lot of the steels on a lot of the knives, especially, which I keep bringing these knives in, especially on some of the other Heinnie Haynes exclusives, or at least the knives that they've worked with, they are more budget friendly steels. Now, the S30V steel is definitely a very high end steel. Some people love it. In fact, a lot of people love it, in fact. It is a martinistic stainless steel that, some of the qualities on here are extremely favourable, certainly in knife making and cutlery making, and the fact that it's incredibly strong. The way in which the steel crystallizes and forms, it's incredibly uniform across it, which makes sure that there are no sort of weak points. But it also makes it incredibly resistant to wear. So once the finish is put on this from Spyderco, it will certainly stay on there for a long time. A lot of people complain that it makes it very difficult to then be able to resharpen, which, I see both sides of that. Certainly if you're, I maybe say into bushcraft and you've got a knife that you want to be able to sharpen whilst out and about, it certainly helps to have one of the lower steels. But for EDC, the advantage of not having to need to worry too much as far as blade maintenance is concerned is actually great on this. And you can also see that this is definitely one of the knives that is produced in the US of A. Now, Another part of the differences, which is the main one, and I know we touched on the retention spring system on the back. The other main difference is the fact that the Heinnie Haynes version, or the Heinnie Haynes exclusive, uses G10 scales. The original, or again, I keep calling this, let's call it the international version. The international version uses FRN scales, which is kind of a resin type material. Again, some people fall into, I really don't mind it. It's fine. Some people are like, no, I hate it. I'd much prefer G10 on there. The G10 on this is really nice. It has a very textured feel to it. But that texture produces like a very strange sound. When the knife's open, and I'll move my hand, but this is literally all I'm doing is just moving it around in my hand. If I bring this close to the, it sounds like, I don't know. It sounds like Gollum's having some sort of asthma attack. And apologies to anybody that suffers from asthma, but it just has a very strange, almost hollow, tinny. I can't explain the sound to it, but it has this very strange acoustics. Now, I never thought I'd be doing certainly a knife review or knife piece of content and talking about acoustics, but it's definitely a strange noise. It's not a noise that I've found in any other knife. I know G10 has a strange kind of noise when you tap on it anyway, but it's not a bad thing, but certainly something that I noticed that it has this kind of noise to it. But then again, when I'm handling a knife, I'm not just like, ooh, I like to fondle my knife. Okay, that was a bit weird, but moving on. So it has really nice G10 scales. Another thing to point out, which is certainly something, there must have been a design decision by this. I don't know whether it was a design decision from Spyderco. Maybe they said, ooh, to Heinnie Haynes, is this something that you'd like? And Heinnie Haynes, ooh, I like it, it's different. But the spine across the back of the scales, and also through where the finger choil is and the palm swell here, is a 90-degree angle. So like most other knives, to make sure that they stay ergonomic, there is just a little bit of a contour to the knife so that it sits in the hand reasonably well. And I know a lot of people talk about Spyderco knives, and they talk about how ergonomic they are, and when it's in the hand, it actually feels really nice. I think for my hand, I have a medium to large size hand. It fits in. I can get, if I want to just hold it there, I can kind of get 4 fingers on, but to use it properly with the finger choil there, it fits perfectly into my hand. But I definitely question any hot spots, certainly with this 90-degree angle across the back, that might make. I've not had any. I certainly haven't had any, so why am I mentioning it? I don't know why I mention it. I guess I mention it because, 1, I'm waffling, but 2, I don't know, it's just something that when I got this, it's just different to other knives, and it just seemed like a strange design choice. Maybe it was purely because of these pins here. If they were to fold that in, they would have had to have done something with these pins. I know here, if we look at the CRKT pillar, they've had to do something with this. So they've had to make something that goes round some of their pins, so there's enough clearance for that. Maybe they wanted to create something that had that aesthetic that they didn't have to do that. I'm not too sure what the design choice or decision was, but it's definitely something that I noticed. Then moving towards the back, there is a deep pocket carry clip, which is nice. I quite like these paperclip style springs. They're very minimal looking. Certainly when it's in my hand, there are no warm spots or anything like that when it's on there. Obviously, just for knife reviews, it makes it a bit weird that you have to put it over. But hey, you know, it's there, and it works functionally as it should do. Now, I thought what I'd do is as well, and you know, I keep bringing these knives in, so it would make sense. But these are some other Heinnie Haynes exclusives. And this one, I suppose, has a little bit of sentimental value to me, and I'll flip these over. This was one of the first EDC knives that I made some content on. In fact, I think this was the first EDC knife that I made some content on. Went out into the Moorlands, and I was absolutely bricking it because, you know, knives are quite technical things, and I wanted to get everything right. But this is the Leon Moore number 5. From CRKT Knives. Very similar, you know, all of these knives are all UK legal knives. Another CRKT knife. Here we have the UK knife law friendly pillar, which again is very nice. You probably notice that all of these knives have something in common, and that is that when you get onto the Heinnie Haynes website, you'll see that there's a lot of red and black splashed around, and red certainly is their colour. So the G10 versions, they all use the same coloured G10, which is, again, just slightly different on this one, that a different type of G10 was used because the colour is just slightly different. Then you have the Real Steel Lunar. This knife really impressed me, and I've got a whole video on this. This is D2 steel. It's just a very nice knife, incredibly sharp, and certainly for the price, this is an absolute steal. And then last but not least, there is the Boca Tech Tool 1. Now, the one thing that I forgot to mention just around the joint in this, and I suppose this would be a good time to do this. So both of these are slip joints with that tensioner on the back, and hopefully if you'll see, as that turns round, the tensioner lifts up, which, you know, is a fairly traditional way of being able to do that. So what you have is a piece of steel that as the knife turns round, it lifts the steel. So you can see here that across the spine there, the steel lifts. In the Spyderco, what they do instead is they have that same piece of steel, but imagine that there are two pieces. It's still one piece that comes jointed there, so that as the knife pivots round, the spring on the inside moves instead. So this back liner here doesn't actually move. Which again, you know, as I mentioned, for them to, you know, we revolutionised the slip joint with the new clip it, slip it, clip it, you know, this thing. It's just a very marketing-y way of saying, you know, we just slightly changed it so that we could say it's better. But, you know, here is my current collection of Heinnie Haynes exclusives. Now, I know at this point you've heard me waffling for quite some time now, and you're thinking, please just tell us, do you like it or not? Well, I like to think that at that point this is what you're thinking. And I have to say, yes, maybe, I don't know. Do you know what? Okay, let's look at it on paper. On the paper, steel, it's got an excellent steel. I really do like S30V. Yes, I had to read it on that because I forgot for a second. It's got a great steel on there. I like the flat grind. I'm a real fan of a drop point knife. It ticks so many boxes as far as UK requirements. The length, it doesn't close, or at least it doesn't lock. The FRN scales for this exclusive have been upgraded to the G10 scales, which are nice. It cuts, oh man, does this cut, this slices through anything. It really is great. But I don't know, I just don't know. What's the point of having a Spyderco knife if you can't do a Spidey flick? I don't know. What's the point of having a dog and barking yourself? I don't know. The design aesthetically looks amazing to have that, you know, right angle. It looks really nice, but it just feels kind of strange. I don't know. I just don't know. I think for my first Spyderco knife, part of me wants to say it's a great knife, and it is a great knife. It's a great knife, but I just don't know. That sounds crap. And I've struggled with this because you won't believe how many retakes I've had to do of this bit towards the end. I think there's always something that gets built up to be something, and I think that's part of the issue that some people have with Spyderco knives. And again, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, but you know, I don't want to turn this into Spyderco knives are crap because of X, Y and Z. I think we're all entitled to our own opinion, and I certainly do think that this is a great knife, but just for me, there's just, I don't know, something didn't match, something didn't work. I don't know what's happening with my shoulders, but you know what I mean? It just felt like it missed something, or I don't know. I've said I don't know a lot in these last 2-3 minutes. It is a great knife. If you're a Spyderco fan, then I'd recommend it. Am I gutted that I bought it? I don't know. I think for a Spyderco knife, it had to be the UKPK. It couldn't have been any other knife from Spyderco to get. It had to be the UKPK. But I think maybe if I'd have had one of the other knives first, so that I could go, I get it. I see why people love these knives. And again, I'm not saying this is a bad knife. I'm not saying it's a bad knife. But I think if I'd have tried one of the other ones first, being able to get that Spidey flick and go, oh, this is brilliant, I absolutely love it. Maybe I'm talking more about my personal tastes and my kind of the hype around a knife, or what I was expecting from a knife. I don't know. Maybe that's tainted what my kind of thoughts on this are. Maybe that's me expecting more from this, because you know, at the end of the day, it is a slip joint, or a slippet, or you know, whatever it is that they've called it. So there are going to be difficulties being able to Spidey flick it. Although you know, there are other knives that are slip joints that I have been able to Spidey flick. I don't know. I don't want you to come away from this thinking that it's a bad knife. It definitely is a nice knife, and I'm glad that I own this knife. But there are other knives that I go to in the drawer that I pass this one to go to, even though it is a great knife. I probably waffled quite a bit there, and I really don't know. This is like take 20 on how to close this off, other than it's a great knife. I just found maybe it didn't live up to the hype that I'd created myself. Is that the knife's fault? No. Is it Spyderco's fault or Heinnie Haynes' fault? No, it certainly isn't. But it just made me feel just a bit weird about it when I did get it. Even though, as I've said, it is a great knife on paper. I'm going to keep this one in because I think this one was the best one that I did, trying to not explain that it's a good knife that I got confused about. So I hope that helps. I'll leave some links in the description below. They are not affiliate links. Heinnie Haynes, come on, let's work together on something. So yeah, I'll leave some links in the description below for these knives. If you want to check them out, that would be awesome. I will also leave some of my social media links in the description below so you can see more from me. If you follow me on Instagram, I tend to be on Instagram a little bit more than I'm on Facebook, but you can see a lot of the future stuff that is being tested and that I'm kind of currently working with. And you know, the usual YouTube thing, we get to the end. If you have liked this, apart from maybe those last 4 or 5 minutes, if you have enjoyed this or found it funny at any certain point, then please feel free to hit that like button. it certainly helps me to understand the kind of content that you're enjoying, and to try and tailor that, maybe make some more of that. If you'd like to subscribe, that would be awesome, and share my content. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. But for now, stay safe, stay Moorlander, and stay EDC. I thought I'd add this. I thought I'd add this mainly because it shows the relationship that I have with Mrs. Moorlander. So I'd got all of these out on the table, and I said to Mrs. Moorlander, which one do you prefer out of all of these Heinnie Haynes exclusives? And she's like, oh, what do you mean? Because they're the sharpest? Or I said, no, just aesthetically, you know, as a non-knife kind of person, which one, if I put these on the table and said, you know, pick a knife, you can have one of these. It's not about the steel or what they're constructed from, you know, it's just the first one that you look at and you're kind of attracted to that one and think, oh, I'll take that one. Out of all of the knives, she went for the CRKT pillar. I said, oh, I mean, it's a great knife, it's a cracking knife. Why did you choose this one? Was it the colour, or was it, you know, the lines or anything? And she went, no, you know me, I'm just always attracted to the short, stubby, fat ones. It's like, okay, enough said.